Hello there, watching Al24 Midnight News coming to you live from Algiers, and to the headlines. President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, said that foreign exchange reserves were exceeding $60 billion, while the economic growth expected to reach 5% in 2023. A month after the biggest scandal in European Parliament history known as Morocco Gate, the European Parliament called for the suspension of cooperation agreements with the Moroccan Kingdom. In the Middle East, Palestinian Foreign Minister Riyad al-Maliki warns of a real and dangerous deterioration in Palestinian territories, particularly in Al-Quds. As French President Macron vows to proceed with pension reform, the police in Paris used tear gas against the nearly 2 million demonstrators on the streets. Welcome again. Starting from Algeria, Algerian President Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune expected on Thursday an increase in the global growth rate of the Algerian economy to 5% by the end of this year. In a speech he delivered during his supervision of the government's meeting opening with the governors at the Palace of Nations, President Tebboune revealed that the country's non-hydrocarbon imports had risen to $7 billion by the end of the last year, an increase of 30% compared to the level recorded in 2021, exceeding the country's foreign exchange reserves with almost, or rather amount of $60 billion.
هذه السنة هذه 2023 باش نسبة النمو تزيد تطلع إلى فوق 5%. في 22 وصلنا إلى ما يقارب 7 ملايير خارج المحروقات، ونتمنى إن شاء الله باش تتضاعف أكثر في السنة هذه اللي أنا فيها. بالنسبة لسنة 23 تصدير خارج المحروقات ارتفع ب 30%، 30.96%، يعني ما يقارب 31%. اليوم احتياط الصرف نتاعنا فات 60 مليار دولار.
And with regard to the money stored outside the banks, the Algerian president made what he called the last call to their owners to accelerate putting them in the bank accounts using the Islamic banking mechanism.
ما زال فيه أموال مكدسة في الأكواب وفي مدفونة، وهذه آخر نداء لإخواننا للأموال هذه ما راهاش مستعملة في الاقتصاد الوطني باش يضخوها في الاقتصاد الوطني. أعطينا ألف ضمان باش الأموال هذه ما تجيش تفسد الاقتصاد وتخلق التضخم، باش تشارك في التنمية الوطنية. وضعها في البنك، قلت ربا ما ربا، افتحنا بنوك إسلامية.
It was also the occasion for President Tebboune to express the wish that Palestine become a full member of the UN this year.
الحمد لله القمة كانت، وكان أكبر مناسبة، أكبر نسبة في المشاركة في كل القمم اللي فاتوا، وخرجنا الحمد لله بوثيقة تاع لم الشمل الحقيقي، وبالأخص لم الشمل الفلسطيني، ورانا مواصلين مع الأشقاء الفلسطينيين باش نفوت المرحلة الثانية ثم المرحلة الثالثة والأخيرة إن شاء الله. إذن كانت انتصارات دبلوماسية كبيرة للجزائر. الجزائر نتمنى باش سنة 23 فلسطين تصبح عضو كامل الحقوق في الأمم المتحدة، دولة قائمة كلها.
And at the international level, the Algerian president affirmed that some parties bet on the failure of our summit and expressed his hope that elections will be held in Libya by the end of the current year.
إن شاء الله نتمنى تكون، إذا كما مثل ما قلت انتخابات شقيقة ليبيا وتكون في حل يرضي الجميع.
Also, Mr. President Tebboune stressed once again that Algeria always support just causes, among which the Sahrawi cause, which the President considers as a matter of principle.
ناحية الصحراء الغربية قضية مبدئية. نظرنا من أجل تيمور لاست، نظرنا من أجل القمر، نظرنا من أجل هذه، نظرنا كل الأمور فاتت بسلاسة. الملف موجود حاليا في الأمم المتحدة في لجنة تصفية الاستعمار، ما هوش في لجنة المساعدات الغذائية ولا لجنة تصفية الاستعمار. نهار اللي تفصل الأمم المتحدة هذاك هو الكلام. إذن قضية الصحراء ما تخلاش عليها أي ثمن، لأنها قضية مبدئية بالنسبة للجزائر.
Algerian diplomacy is recalling one of the most important victories it achieved in 1981, as it played an important role in solving the diplomatic crisis between Iran and the United States, where Algeria acted as a mediator and contributed to the release of 52 American hostages under the terms of Algiers Accords.
On January 20, 1981, an Air Algerie aircraft landed at Algiers International Airport coming from Iran, with 52 American diplomats on board who were freed after being held hostage for 444 days at their embassy in Tehran. In 1980-81, Algeria mediated in the Tehran hostage crisis. The American embassy in Tehran was stormed by protesters on November 4, 1979. Algeria's efforts led to the release of the American hostages, since the two belligerents chose Algeria as the mediator. After several failed attempts by Washington to reach a deal with Tehran, Algerian mediators, who had a great deal of experience in international negotiation, succeeded to end the conflict between the two rivals. They tabled the option of an Algerian declaration, which would set out the independent obligations of both the United States and Iran instead of the classic form of the bilateral agreement. The high-level Algerian mediators were more than just a channel of communication between the two countries. They paved the way for a solution likely to be accepted by both countries. Deputy Secretary of State Warren Christopher signed the Algiers Accord with the then Foreign Minister Mohammed bin Yahya on January 19, 1981 at the Algerian Foreign Ministry in Algiers, and before departing, he signed and handed a note to bin Yahya thanking Algeria.
Mr. Minister, I want to express to your President, to you and your colleagues, and to the Algerian people the deep gratitude and respect of the people of the United States for bringing us to this moment of profound relief that these 52 men and women and their families have emerged from the chasm of fear. You and your government have demonstrated an inspiring commitment to human values and have provided the world with a singular example of the art of diplomacy.
Algeria, a country that has always been faithful to the values of dialogue and cooperation, did not hesitate to contribute without straying from its neutrality to the positive outcome of the crisis between the US and Iran.
Participants in the 60th Congress of Polisario France Conference approved the composition of elections committee members, which will manage the process of electing the Fund Secretary General and the National Secretariat members for a 3-year term. The committee includes 170 members of different regulations, as it will hold its conception after its objection directly, and it will prepare its program according to a basic law of France, which was approved by the Congress on Wednesday evening before it was presented to the conference for a vote on Thursday. The European Parliament called for the suspension of cooperation agreements with Morocco a month after the biggest scandal in history of the European Parliament, known as Morocco Gate. Mohammed Khatou.
The Morocco Gate scandal exposed many European MPs who received bribes from the Mahzen regime in return for their collaboration and services. Pressure is high on Rabat, as European MPs called during the public meeting held over the last 2 days for banning Morocco's representatives from entering parliament, suspending all agreements with the kingdom that includes Western Sahara, and drafting a legal arsenal capable of dealing with foreign interference and attempts to corrupt members of the European Parliament. The MPs also called for the necessity to take concrete measures against those who privileged their personal interests and served the interests of the Makhzen at the expense of the European bloc, in parallel with continuing the investigations to uncover all the circumstances of the case. Karima Delli, member of the European Parliament, spoke out in favor of forming a common bloc against those who want to destabilize the EU.
Madame la Commissaire, mes chers collègues,
All joint business with Rabat must be suspended and a supreme authority for transparency must be created. I also call for a common front against those who seek to destabilize the European Union. Friendship groups with third countries must be ended and EU relations with Morocco must be reviewed.
For her part, the European Commissioner pledged to table a series of measures aimed at combating corruption and strengthening the deterrent and judicial capacities of the European Parliament through the creation of a transparency body next April in order to avoid that the scenario of the Morocco Gate scandal be repeated. This came as former member of the European Parliament and the main suspect in the Morocco Gate scandal, Pier Antonio Panzeri, concluded an agreement with the Belgian Public Prosecutor's Office, providing for his cooperation with investigators in exchange for a reduced sentence.
Two American organizations, namely the National Action Group for Palestine and Justice and Charity Group, call for rejecting the hosting by Morocco of the Nakba II summit, warning against the rush to normalization with the Zionist entity and its dangerous repercussion on national sovereignty. This came as Zionist Foreign Minister announced on January 2nd that Morocco will host during the month of March the Nakba II summit meeting that will bring together the Zionist entity, the UAE, Bahrain and Egypt, in addition to the host country and the United States. Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Shtaya stressed on Wednesday the necessity of achieving national reconciliation, bringing the Algiers Agreement into effect and strengthening the resistance commitment of Palestinian people. He warned of consequences of continuation of escalating Zionist violation. Palestinian Foreign Minister Riyad al-Maliki warns of a real and dangerous deterioration of situation in Palestine territories and especially in Al-Quds during a press conference in Ramallah. Hussein Berkan.
Palestinian Foreign Minister Riyad al-Maliki called Thursday on the U.S. administration to work to stop the unilateral Zionist actions. This came in a press conference following a meeting with ambassadors and consuls of the countries represented by the Palestinian Authority at the headquarters of the Palestinian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Al-Maliki referred to the bloody beginning of this year as the current Zionist government wasted no effort to put its hostile agenda into practice through the policies of annexation, colonial settlement, and the bloody incursions that its forces carry out almost daily, which often leaves martyrs and injuries.
We have witnessed a bloody start of the year with the martyrdom of 17 Palestinian citizens, including 5 children, adding to a heavy toll of crimes. And we have pointed out that the policies pursued by the Zionist government inevitably lead to a real and dangerous deterioration of the situation on the ground, especially in the city of Al-Quds.
Riyad al-Maliki also called on the international community, the United Nations and the UN Security Council to move out of the framework of international appeals and condemnations to practical steps to deter the continuing violation and crimes of the occupations and its settlers against the Palestinian people, and to force the occupying state to comply with international resolutions and the international law.
We called on states to take concrete and dissuasive measures to reject and confront the illegal actions and policies of the Zionist entity and the program of this fascist government, its methods and its systematic violations of international law, including United Nations resolutions, and to work for the implementation of these resolutions, foremost among which are the resolutions of the Security Council.
The ministry called for translating words into action that guarantee international protection for Palestinian people and forcing the Zionist government to engage in a negotiated political track leading to the implementation of international legitimacy decisions regarding the situation in the occupied Palestine.
Still in Asia, after the Lebanese parliament failed to elect a new president for the 11th time on Thursday, prolonging a government vacuum that comes amid one of the worst economic crises of modern times. Lebanese demonstrated in front of the parliament in Beirut to show their displeasure following several failures of deputies to elect a new president in almost 3 months. Lebanon has been without a president since Michel Aoun finished his term at the end of October 2022. At least 4 people have been killed and dozens injured in a stampede at a stadium in Al-Basra in southern Iraq ahead of the Arabian Gulf Cup final, according to Iraqi football officials. Football fans attempted to enter the stadium by jumping over a wall as people were crowding the surroundings ahead of the Gulf Cup final on Thursday that Iraq won 3-2 against Sultanate of Oman. Now in Europe, French workers went on strike and joined marches across the country on Thursday in protest against government plans to raise the retirement age by 2 years to 64. The strikes are a major test for President Emmanuel Macron, who said on Thursday that his pension reform plan, which opinion polls show is hugely unpopular, was just and responsible and had to be carried out. Hundreds of thousands took part in rallies across the country.
In countries where people live ever longer, where we have created a strong and fair welfare system which rely on equality between generations, at moments where there are fewer and fewer people who are economically active and more who are retired. If you want the pact between generations to be fair, this reform needs to be carried out, and we will do it in a spirit of respect and dialogue, but with determination and a sense of responsibility.
It is not because we are not directly concerned that we cannot feel concerned. We're here quite simply because when we know that a quarter of the poorest die at 62 and that today we want to put the retirement age at 65, that makes no sense. We young people will be the first to feel the impact too, to find work more and more jobs are retained. Well, that means more unemployment for us, so I think everyone should feel concerned. I think when people say there's no point in taking to the streets, I don't agree. I think we can also show that we are absolutely not for it and that maybe we will be heard. So it's important.
Opening Russia-Ukraine fight, Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko met with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov in Minsk on Thursday to discuss Russia's special military operation in Ukraine. Lukashenko told Lavrov that if something is needed from his side, he is ready to do it. During their talks, they both underscored what they called Western encroachments on the Eastern European allies, with Lukashenko remarking that they are also trying to use Ukraine against Belarus.
If something is needed from our side and we can do it, you know well what we can do. Say it directly. We will work together hand in hand. The intentions of our Western neighbors, and not only Ukraine, they are also trying to use Ukraine against Belarus. But what amazes me and pleasantly surprises me, Ukraine is still holding on. It doesn't go for provocations against Belarus, although our Western neighbors are actively pushing it.
Что касается специальной военной операции,
We see how in the north of Europe, which was largely a neutral territory, NATO in Finland and Sweden are now being set up. All this is very close to our borders, and I completely agree with you that the agreements that the two presidents reach in the sphere of our military, technical, military and defense cooperation are very, very timely in terms of readiness.
In same line of thought, nearly 11 months into Russian military operation in Ukraine, Western allies, particularly United States and Germany, met on Thursday to discuss how best to support Ukraine as Germany faced mounting pressure to supply battle tanks. Boris Pistorius, Germany's new defense minister, welcomed his U.S. counterpart Lloyd Austin to Berlin just hours after taking office. He stated that the German weapons systems already delivered had proven their worth, reiterating that Germany will always support Ukraine in the future, together with the Western partners, precisely USA.
German weapons systems delivered so far to Ukraine have proven their worth, for example, howitzers, Gepard, or the state-of-the-art Iris air defense system. Together with our partners, particularly the United States, we will continue to support Ukraine in its fight for freedom, territorial independence and sovereignty.
So we'll continue to support Ukrainian people as they resist Russian aggression and defend their sovereign territory, and for logistical operations to quickly move soldiers and equipment to and through Germany to reinforce our eastern flank allies.
In Eastern Europe, a fire at a military base in Armenia early on Thursday killed 15 soldiers after they used gasoline for heating at a military barrack in the village of Azat, eastern Armenia, as stated by the Armenian Defense Ministry. The defense minister said that unit's commander and about a dozen other officers were fired. The Armenian Prime Minister also fired the general who was in charge of a group of forces in that region, including the unit where the fire occurred.
Dear colleagues, dear people, a terrible incident happened last night. 15 military personnel died as a result of fire at the barracks of military units of the Ministry of Defense, located in the village of Asat, Gigarkonik region.
Mr. Prime Minister, according to preliminary data, in particular the preliminary data of the military police, a fire broke out as a result of a violation of fire safety rules, including due to the use of prohibited substances. We are talking about gasoline, and therefore it was not possible to extinguish it.
Coming back to Algeria, the days of the European film were kicked off last evening from 3 Algerian cities, Algiers, Bija and Oran. This event, organized under the slogan Migration and Movement of People Across the World, is known for showing films on this global issue from European countries. Nabil Khazini.
With these scenes from the inside of the cinema theatre of Algiers, the European Film Days started last evening and are due to continue till the 26th of January. The event is also taking place in Bijaya and Oran. Matares, a movie of Algerian filmmaker Rachid Ben Haj, was among some 20 fiction films and documentaries to be shown, most of which deal with the issue of migration.
I tell a story, as I said earlier. It is a story between 2 kids. He is Algerian and she is from another African country. The 2 kids discuss and there is a struggle between them because the Algerian little boy sees that girl as a thief for his source of wealth. However, in the end, they end up becoming friends and things will change, and at this exact point, the girl has to leave.
Short films that address major climate changes and address the problem of climate refugees and population displacement due to these changes will also be shown to the public.
Migration is a global problem. It's not, or a global issue. It is not only with Europe or Europe and other areas around Europe. It's a global issue. And I think it's important to be aware of the fact that we need to fight the causes of migration at its roots.
The 7 days of the European film are organized by the European Union delegation to Algeria in collaboration with the Ministry of Culture and Arts and the National Center for Cinematography.
Now in the Shan, the African tournament, the Sudanese national team fell Thursday evening in the front of its Ghanaian counterpart in the African Cup competition for home-based players, which was held in Constantine Stadium at Shahid Hamlawi. The match of the second round of the third group ended with a full 3 goals against 1 goal, and for this result, Ghana is almost to the quarter-finals along Madagascar, while Sudan needs to beat the latter to keep their chances alive in the tournament. And to this end, ladies and gentlemen, thank you ever so much for being with us. For more updates, you can follow our social media platform. And for now, all I can say, good night.